And welcome back to a Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono, and my co-host, Chris, is back here to give you the weekend lineup, our breakdown and preview of all starts, sits, and sleepers of all the matchups starting Sunday morning through to Monday night.
Yes,
As
sir.
usual, do not forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification button so you get all of those updates, drops that we do on a daily basis right in your inbox.
Go ahead and hit that button and help some brothers out.
Yeah, exactly.
Help some brothers out.
We are enjoying giving you guys the content, and we would love to continue to do so. And the more likes and subscribes that we get, the better off we are, and the more likely we are to continue to do this at the level we are doing it. We are enjoying it. We're just a couple of best friends that just like to give our advice for fantasy football. The fact of the matter is, we are two successful fantasy football managers over the course of our careers in fantasy football. So
yeah, you had to add that second part in there.
Listen, I'm on a 3-game tear, and it's going to be a 4. So, okay,
you only have 3 wins.
Don't matter.
Hey, he's coming back. He's coming back.
I don't want to bore everybody with my injury woes because I'm sure there's people out here who had the same thing, but I was stacked with them. Let's be honest. So,
Yeah.
I was. But let's get into the meat.
Continue.
Yeah, let's get into the meat of the sandwich here. Let's start off. We had the Dolphins at the Chiefs. I mean, Sunday morning in Germany. It's in Germany. So let's talk about this game here.
Have a morning beer for this game. Yeah.
I don't know if you've been following, like I've been following in the news and all the media attention around this. Dolphins have been out there for a little bit longer, and I think the Chiefs just went out there today.
Yeah.
And people like MVS are complaining about having to travel and everything. I think this is a game where the Dolphins catch the Chiefs on their heels a little bit, on top of the fact that the Chiefs haven't been playing that great offense, and we'll get to our starts and sits over there. But let's start off. We're throwing yes into Tua, a yes into Tyreek, a yes into Waddle. Mostert is a yes. We don't have the caution sign next to him, mostly because I don't see anybody really eating too much into his production, but I would put a caution in the fact that you're not getting that same output from him like you were getting back when him and Achane were just lighting up the field.
I mean, I still don't think it matters. I still think Raheem Mostert's going to be a good start. And he's been good out of the backfield as a receiver. Tua likes to dump it down to him. And really, besides Waddle's been stepping up the last couple of weeks. And with Hill on the season that he's having, they need a third option there. And there really hasn't been anyone to step up. Mostert's been a guy for him out of the backfield and continues to be that guy. Yeah, Jeff Wilson's probably going to eat a couple touches away, but I still think, Mostert is going to be having a top 10 weekend in terms of
I agree.
RB finish. So I'm still going ahead and starting him with confidence. And the thing is, I do think that this game, I think that Miami's going to dominate this game. So,
yeah, I do too.
So I think Mostert's going to get his work in just to slow the game down after they're up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. In the grand scheme of it, the Chiefs have been pretty good against the run. However, they have 2 linebackers out. Bolton's on IR, and I think their other guy, I'm drawing a blank on his name now, but he's just questionable for this game too as well, and I don't think he's traveling. So that takes away 2 of that second-tier run stoppers. So you're going to have to rely on your run stopping at the beginning. And with the speed of Raheem Mostert, if he gets past that initial group, or he gets it to the outside like he mostly does, it's going to be those D-backs having to make tackles. And they're going to be already catching up with Waddle and Hill. So I think you're right. I think it could be an interesting game. I just think temper your expectation a little bit with him. I know we say that a lot about players, but we're usually pretty correct with that. Is, hey, it may not be 125, 150 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns, but for him to realistically have 80, a couple, some yards out the backfield and a tutty. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you got to think about the teams that are also on bye. You've got the Lions on bye. So you got Montgomery and Gibbs on bye. You've got ETN on bye. You've got Broncos on bye. So you have Javonte, who's starting to get up there. And then who's the 4th team on bye? Lions, Broncos, Anyway, regardless, the fact is the teams that are on bye have legitimate running backs that most of your teams aren't going to be able to face. So if you're starting Mostert, you can start with confidence here. And we're going to start the Dolphins defense because, like we said, I think the Chiefs are going to fall a little bit flat this week. Niners. So, yeah, CMC. There you go. So I think they're going to fall a little bit flat. And let's go over to what we're seeing from the Chiefs offense here. We're going to start Pat Mahomes because you can't afford to not start him if you have him on your team. Pacheco, I think they did him a little bit dirty. That offense got away from the run game too early last week. He had a fantastic rushing yards per carry average. However, they just gave him the ball, I think, 10 rushes last week. That was it. They could have pounded that ball 20 times with him.
Yeah, and CEH is already ruled out. Not that that's going to affect anything really, but it's going to be more work for Pacheco. I do think that they're going to try to slow the game down. I think Pacheco has a decent game this game too. So I do like him, but the as you saw with Miami on our starters, I'm saying start the defense. Like I this is something I've been saying since week 2, week 3 is the Chiefs have not been impressive on offense. They're not like they were in the last couple of years. And they haven't shown any reason to believe that they're going to just start clicking to where they were, in the last, the last 3-4 years offensively. So, yeah, I mean, I like Pacheco because they're going to probably rely on the run game more because these receivers just haven't been, other than Rashee Rice, there really hasn't been anyone there that stepped up on a consistent basis. You've had one big game from MVS. Sky Moore's been an absolute dud, like we said he was going to be in the preseason. Travis Kelce has been good, but Taylor Swift ain't going to be at this game. So
it's true.
Listen, I know I don't want to talk about Taylor Swift here, but
neither does Kelce. So
neither does Kelce. But the statistics are what they are, and in games where she's not in attendance, he's catching less than 60 yards. And so I think that Rashee Rice is the guy that you want to start here from a pass catching standpoint. But other than that, like Pacheco's got to be the guy that they're going to rely on because either they're going to chase points and there's going to be a couple more of these receivers that are going to have decent games, or they're going to try to keep it a game with Miami by running the football with Pacheco.
Yeah, so trying to slow down that offense. I agree. Yeah. And the thing about Pacheco, he's got a 4.25 yards per carry average. The average across the board for the league right now is at an all-time low in the past 5 seasons. It's at about 4.1, so he's above the league average. You got to trust him on the ground. And like Chris said, the passing game hasn't been anything to write home about. Pat Mahomes has 8 interceptions this season. He had 12 last year and 13 the year before. He has 8 already this season through 8 games. That just tells me that I'm not going to trust, and I'm going to want to play that Dolphins defense, number 1. But 2, I'm not going to trust it. He's not the top of the leaderboard in terms of yardage. That was Cousins and Tua. He's not on the top in terms of touchdowns. That was Cousins and that's Tua. So like you look at these guys, he is no longer the prolific passer. And you could say it's the people around him, and I kind of agree with it. They need to play Rashee Rice a little bit more. They need to let go of the Sky Moore project. They need to they needed to get somebody else in there before the trade deadline. I don't know how much they tried and how much money they were willing to try and move around, but it's going to be difficult for them to do what they're doing. Everybody's like, well, they did it last year without him, without Tyreek. They did it last year with the guys they had, but Juju was almost a 1,000-yard receiver last year.
Right.
Like they don't have a guy on pace for that.
Right. They had another guy. They had Juju in there that was able to take a majority of the catches when he was healthy last year. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't. You got to start Mahomes, but I don't have a lot of confidence in him going the rest of the season. I rank a lot of guys over him. Josh Allen's starting to figure it out. Even with Kirk Cousins going down, Tua is a better option. Lamar's a better option. There's other guys out there. He's been
Sam Howell is a top 10 quarterback especially for fantasy right now.
Yeah, he's been outdueled in a lot of games this season. So, I like him in this game only because, again, I think that Miami is going to score a lot of points, and if they're scoring a lot of points, Mahomes is going to have to throw the ball.
Well, let me throw this out there real quick to everybody because Pat Mahomes has had one game of 41. He's had a game of 31, and then he's had 23, 25, 23. Besides that, he's also had a 19-point game, a 15.2-point game, and last week a 5.6-point game. So, like, again,
touchdowns.
Yeah. The outliers of the 41 and the 5, you're looking at a guy who's sitting in the low to mid 20s on average, when you're used to a guy that's in the upper 20s, lower 30s on average for the previous season. So let's move on. Let's head over to the Seahawks Ravens. I like this. Another battle of the birds again here. Yep. Seahawks here, we have Geno Smith as a sit. This is a very difficult defense, and you're maybe wondering like, oh, wow, you've got Metcalf and Lockett as starts and Jigba as a sleeper. Yeah, that's fine. You can have a quarterback as a sit and still start your receivers, because to me, Geno Smith, he could throw for 2 touchdowns, but he could throw for 2 picks as well, and he could be under 300 yards. There's other quarterbacks that I am expecting to be over 300 and have at least 2 touchdowns. And that's where we're at with Geno. So you're starting Kenneth Walker. I think this guy has proven to be a touchdown machine in the league so far. If not, he puts up the yardage to back up his lack of touchdowns. Charbonnet is a sneaky play here, depending upon it, but Kenneth Walker seemed to be a lot healthier this week than he was going into the game last week. That's why you saw that uptick from Charbonnet. And then Metcalf, the targets in the past couple weeks, I believe it's got something like 21 targets in the past couple weeks. Yeah. Unbelievable. It's just not turning into what you want. And so Metcalf owners are probably a pretty annoyed and pissed off because they're waiting for this big game, because he's wide receiver 44 overall in standard scoring. But he had, 23 targets in the past 2 games. It didn't net 20 receptions, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, what sucks is that he's only had 9 receptions.
Yeah, I mean, that's the rough part.
9 receptions.
Tyler Lockett's been playing better. Everybody's expecting him to come down to earth. I still like Lockett. Like, to me, Lockett is always been the sure-handed guy, always finds the open pockets in zone coverage, and gets that misdirection to get the safety to either stack up on him or something different to allow him to get open. So I like him. He seems to be a good relief valve, too, for Geno. He's not forcing it to Lockett. He's finding Lockett open. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's playing a little bit like the guy that everybody expected him to be coming out of college. He's getting good opportunities. He's getting good yards after the catch, and he's finding himself open in 3 receiver sets. That's going to prove, especially in the red zone, to take away from DK Metcalf. It's hard to sit Metcalf with that target volume, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is you're not going to sit a guy that has 23 targets in the last 2 games. Even if it's 9 receptions, you're just not going to. Now, JSN has, he's had touchdowns in the last 2 games, and so right now he's touchdown dependent. And how long is that going to be consistent, right? Without the touchdowns in the last 2 games, he's at 36 yards and 63 yards. Is that good enough to be a viable wide receiver or a flex play? I think that he's a sleeper because, with trends like this where he is getting more involved, but he's had 11 targets in those 2 games, 7 2 weeks ago, and then 4 last game. He converted on 7 of those 11 targets. It's a better conversion rate, and he's a red zone target. So you got to like that about them. I don't know how much it's going to be a shootout in this game. I think that Baltimore does end up winning this game, but it's a game that they're probably going to be behind. They're probably going to need to throw, so you're going to need your receivers to get after it.
I like JSN for the simple purpose of we have a bye week where there are some prolific pass catchers that are on bye. Yeah. And so if JSN's on your bench and you're deciding on whether or not to flex him versus somebody else, I like him for that purpose. I'd be throwing him in my flex. Yeah, he's touchdown dependent, but the opportunities may be there. It is it's one of the better Ravens defenses of recent history, and they've been a pretty good defense in recent history. But I still think Geno Smith and this wide receiver core are tough to cover. It's 3 very good wide receivers, and like Chris said, they're going to have to pass. So why not flex a guy like him versus trying to hope that someone like Devin Singletary throwing in your flex is actually going to be able to do something, because that Texas offense can't run. You know what I mean? Yeah. So let's talk about the Ravens here. I love this team. They are actually picking up a good head of steam. If you're a Lamar Jackson owner, you're pretty happy. You stuck through the tough first couple games of the season, and now he's starting to come into his own. And I think they're kind of merging old offense with the new offense a little bit, which helps
Lamar's
out too.
Backyard cooking.
Yeah,
that's what's happening right now.
So we're starting Lamar. We're starting Gus. I mean, it's hard to sit a guy who just had 3 touchdowns. I know he's a big sell high candidate, but Justice Hill has been pretty good with the ball too, but when they get down towards the goal line, it's the Gus bus. Yeah. You're sitting Odell, you're sitting Bateman. They're second fiddle to Flowers and Andrews, who you're starting every single week from here on out, because both those guys get open, doesn't matter. And then this Baltimore Ravens defense is fantastic. They're playing fantastic defensive football, as they always do. Roquan Smith is an absolute monster on the field. Yeah, that guy is going until he retires. He reminds me of Urlacher. Until he retires, he's going to be in the top 5 in tackles in the league constantly.
Yeah.
So. I don't know if you have anything else to say about the Ravens. This one's a pretty easy start over here. No, even though the Seahawks have a pretty good defense. This may be a game that hits the under because both defenses are pretty good and they're pretty good at takeaways. But I don't know. The Ravens play fast.
I was going to say that, but they do play fast. But they're one of those teams that they're going to kind of eat away clock. They're going to run, and so they're going to eat chunk. They're not going to get big chunk yardage without taking a couple plays. It's not going to be these one-score drives. So I could see this game hitting the under for sure.
Yeah. Let's go to another game here that, unless even if Deshaun Watson plays, could still hit the under, and that's the Browns-Cardinals. We're talking about a team that's been...
The defense is going to score 3 touchdowns.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Well, even if Deshaun Watson plays, I'm still going to be a sit and wait and see from him because he did play previous week, and it was not pretty. And I did not like what we saw from him. So I'm going to sit and wait even if he does start. You're starting Kareem Hunt and you're starting Jerome Ford here. I think Jerome Ford another week healthy. You saw that they didn't really game plan for him very well going to the game because they were expecting him to be out. And then all of a sudden pre-game, they're like, oh, he's suiting up. So he didn't play much at the beginning of the game at all. Didn't come into the fourth quarter, but was very effective when in there. He's definitely the most effective running back in terms of his explosiveness, big yard carries, yards per carry. Kareem Hunt is definitely going to eat into touchdowns from him. That's the hard part. He's definitely a good goal line guy on this team. So it's kind of a 2-headed monster, even though it was a 3-headed monster last week with Pierre Strong. I think once Jerome Ford's fully healthy, you're going to expect the two of these guys to eat up most of the touches. Amari Cooper's a start. The guy is still playing at a elite level. You just got to hope that somebody gets him the ball. And I think when Deshaun Watson's in there, he's going to consistently try and hit him as much as he can. And Njoku's another one. He's been a relief valve in the passing game for all the quarterbacks that have played here. Plus, he has been pretty good with the tight end screens for yards after the catch. He always is pretty good with that too. And Cleveland defense.
Cleveland defense, start him. I mean, you have Clayton Tune going on the other side as of right now. So we don't know with Kyler Murray. He traveled with the team. We just don't know. He's still questionable.
Even if it's Kyler Murray, though. Even if it's Kyler Murray, it's his first game back. You got to knock the rust off, and you got a tough. Like the Browns are a good defense to begin with. It's not like we're saying start a subpar defense.
Yeah, this is where I'm saying just start your runners against this defense. Start Jerome Ford, start Kareem Hunt. I think they're going to have good games. I think this game is going to slow down a bit. The Arizona defense, I know that they're 1-7, and their record just doesn't reflect it. But they've been in games. The defense has been playing good, and now they trade Josh Dobbs. It's good for the future. He's traded into a team that absolutely needs a quarterback. And at the worst, they're starting Clayton Tune for a week before Kyler Murray's really fully back and ready. After that, this offense is going to pick up. They get James Conner back. They get Kyler Murray back. And I do like this offense the rest of the year. But against this defense, I can't imagine that they're going to start Kyler Murray in his first game back against this defense.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
I agree. Just a quick note on David Njoku. He's had a total of 17 targets in the past 2 games, and they did get rid of Peoples-Jones. They sent him over to the Lions. I mean, I know Elijah Moore is technically your number 2 wide receiver, but the number 2 pass catcher on this team is David Njoku. So those tight end streamer guys who have been dropping and picking up, he's looking more like Njoku of last year that was a great person to play on good tight end matchups. And I did that last year with Everett and Njoku, and I was happy every single week with my, barring 1 or 2 here and there, one of those guys was able to do it. So if you have him on your squad, do not drop him unless you absolutely have to, because you're going to like some of the games that he has coming up, especially weeks 12 through 17 and the bulkier playoff time.
Yeah.
All right, let's look about the Cardinals here. We said sit Kyler Murray even if he's playing. We're sitting tune. De Mercado is out. He's officially out, so you're not playing him. I don't like any other running backs here, especially against this defense. But you are going to play Hollywood Brown. They're going to have to throw the ball, and he is their number one pass catcher. So you're starting him, but with caution. As well as Trey McBride, you're starting him with caution. Fantastic week one as the starter this past week. However, you are facing the Browns defense. It is a different type of defense here.
Yeah, with the rookie quarterback. In his first start.
Even if it's Kyler Murray, I still think it's going to be tough because you know who is going to want to be eating sack lunches all game is Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
And so I agree.
I still like him, and because his defense is good, I do think that they're going to get up. So they're going to have to throw the ball, and so Trey McBride and Hollywood on garbage alone, I think are both viable starters. I do like other people over Hollywood Brown. At tight end, you got to like what you saw out of Trey McBride last week. So yeah, go ahead and start him.
Yeah, roll the dice.
Especially with the buys. If you had Kittle and you need to pick up a bye week replacement, he's not a bad bye week replacement. I would like Ferguson over him or Schultz over him, but I still think he's a viable option this week.
Yeah, I'd even go with Cole Kmet over him. There's a couple others I'd go over him that I just like the matchup better. So let's go to the next matchup, and it's going to be the Buccaneers versus the Texans here. We got a lot of green against the Buccaneers, and we're also going to have a lot of green for the Texans too. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair through the air here as well. I do like Rachaad White because he has great value out the backfield. I like Baker Mayfield because the guy's just balling. He's just playing football like he's having fun out there, and it's fun to watch a guy like Baker play when it looks like he's enjoying the game of football because he plays it the way it should be played. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are both viable options. I like Evans over Godwin just because he always gets the looks downfield and in the red zone. Kate Otten is... Go ahead.
I was going to say, Chris Godwin had a great game last week, and if it wasn't for the touchdown at the end of the game to Mike Evans in garbage time, he had a bad game. I mean, he wasn't productive up until that one long catch for a touchdown, and Godwin was the guy that he went to. I still think I would agree with you. I think they're both good starts this week. I do think that this game is a potential shootout game, where especially in the air. On the other side, we'll get to the Texans, but Rachaad White's been great out of the backfield as a receiver. I know his rushing numbers haven't been fantastic, but that's fine. Like he's getting 30 to 40 yards receiving every game, and that's what you're looking for. If he falls into the end zone, then it's fantastic. He's having a great week.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I actually don't mind White when you look at it. Houston is not a big-time run-stopping defense. They were on the list of that preseason if anybody looked at it, but you got to remember, too, that most teams were able to pass the ball and get points on them early last year, and so teams weren't running the ball that often or scoring big runs on them often, and it was big plays. Yeah, except Derrick Henry. That's very true. But I mean, he has a 3.3 yards per carry. It's lower than last year, which was also terrible. But as of recent, when you look at him, he's been losing touches 7, 13, 9 after the bye. But his yards per carry have been above his average 2 of those 3 games. But he's also had, in the past 2 games, 13 targets and 13 receptions for 135 yards. So that's where his value is going to be moving on. And if he gets games where he's able to break some big runs off, it's going to even be higher, where he could finish in that wide receiver 1 contention because he's catching the ball for 60, 70 yards.
Oh, yeah.
And then Kate Otten, he's had 6 targets in the past 2 games. So again, we're talking about tight end streamers in a game that could be a shootout and you're passing. You got to like it because Texans aren't that great against the tight end either. And then I like the Bucs defense. They're takeaway machines and they have been all season. So why not go against a rookie quarterback and with a terrible rushing offense right now?
Because he's only thrown 1 interception on the season, but and it was last week. I still like the Buccaneers defense. I would agree with all these starts and sits. Obviously, there are starts and sits, so I would agree with them. But like I said, I do think that this game has potential for a shootout, which is good and bad for the defenses, because if the defenses are getting after the quarterback and they're getting the sacks, then it's great. Like, let up the points, fine. I don't think that it's going to be a 40-40 game, but if this is a 28-31 game, that's going to be good for your defense if they have a couple turnovers or a handful of sacks. So
yeah, I mean, again, we have him as a start. I have him as a start pretty much because of takeaways, and with takeaways you always have an opportunity for pick six here and there. There's other teams out there that have stingier defenses in what could be shootout matchups like Dallas and the Eagles, and we may not say start both of those defenses, but Tampa Bay is just one that has been pretty good for you if you've been streaming them all season. And then let's move on to the Texans. As you can see, a lot of green here as well. CJ Stroud is a start. The guy's been playing really good football for a rookie coming out of here and very efficient. Dameon Pierce is dealing with a ankle injury, and he is questionable.
He's out.
He has the official out?
Yep.
Okay. So Devin Singletary is a green light, but I was planning this start and sit when I was talking with Chris as if Pierce was going to be out anyway. I have Singletary as a start with caution. I don't think he's been that good either. That whole rushing offense has been absolutely atrocious all season. Singletary is running a 3.7 yard per carry himself. Not much better than Dameon Pierce. He has no rushing touchdowns, and he only has 7 receptions on the season for 42 yards. Nothing in his stat line says, let's fire him up. In fact, to me, this is one of those situations where I'd rather go play Roschon Johnson. I'd rather go play one of these guys who may have a better opportunity with, Rachaad White to me. Even Singletary's getting the only touches. Rachaad White over Singletary any day because he just is doing more with the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with you there, but it's close. I mean, I would still start just on volume base because I do think that Rachaad White has struggled to run the football and he's struggled to have big plays. Actually, that's not necessarily true. He had a couple of big runs.
Singletary has two, though. Singletary has two at a 3.7 yard per carry. It's a little bit more than White. But Mike Boone's going to get touches this game. Like they've just proven that they don't want to go with one guy, which is unfortunate for Dameon Pierce owners like me, and unfortunate for them because I think if you give Dameon Pierce the ball 20 times, he's going to have 80 to 100 yards like he's already shown this season. They're just not doing it. It's a weird offense.
It goes down to I think that this game is going to be based around passing the football, and I think that they're the pass catchers in here. So I don't love either Rachaad White or Devin Singletary in this game. If you have like Gibbs and McCaffrey are your starters and you need a guy for a bye week replacement, either one of these guys, I mean, you're not going to get Rachaad White as a bye week replacement, but Singletary you can. It's a decent play just on the increased volume that he's going to get because he's going to be the starter, not Boone.
Yeah. Well, most of these plays we're talking about start Singletary, start White. You got to think about the fact that we just talked about a bunch of these RB1s that are sitting this week. ETN, right. CMC.
Yeah, you have three major guys that are
4 technically with Gibbs and Montgomery, and Javonte Williams is putting himself in that territory. So you can argue that, the volume-wise, 20-something touches, you make that face. I'm telling you right now, they beat the Chiefs last week, and he was a big piece of that offense. But you're going to have to think about playing one of these guys as your RB2 or your flex play because of the bye weeks that we have. And so we're saying you could feel comfortable with Rachaad White because of his passing game usage. Devin Singletary doesn't carry that. And he's carrying a low yards per carry. That's why we have him as a caution.
Yeah.
Nico Collins and Tank Dell I love here. I think Tank Dell gets back on track. Pun intended.
No Robert Woods again.
Yep, no Robert Woods. And I just think last week they tried to get too cute with their play calling, and they couldn't commit to the run, and they didn't commit to the pass. They didn't commit to anything. It just seemed very lethargic, and they seemed very timid in playing football. They weren't attacking defenses like they were earlier in the season.
Yeah, what you gotta like about Tank Dell is that they're scheming to get him involved. He had 3 rushes last week. He had 4 receptions last week, even though it was only for 16 yards. I mean, the volume, the production wasn't there last week, but you gotta like the opportunity that he's getting. So he's a sneaky play this week. I would probably say he's a sleeper rather than a start. I do think that there's a lot of good options at receiver to play this week. But he's a guy that I have him on my team, and it's really coming down to him or Marquise Brown for me. And we'll see who I end up firing up come Sunday morning based on if Kyler's starting or not. But,
I'd still probably start Tank Dell for the ceiling.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I like. He's a big playability is there.
Yeah.
I mean, and Dalton Schultz past 3 weeks has had a total of 23 targets. I think it's gotten 13 receptions. Last week was a tough one. He had a nice catch that was ripped out as a fumble and then never really went back to him again. But the previous two before the bye, he had 60+ yards and a touchdown in each of those games. He's had 3 touchdowns in the past 4 weeks. I just like him as a streamer option too, especially in this game here. So
yeah, for sure.
And this Houston defense has not been terrible, to be honest. They've been steady Eddie. They haven't been completely thrashed, and they haven't been also dominating offenses. So you can get yourself a good streaming defense here if you say carry the Lions or you carry one of these other or the Niners, and you'll get solid output from them.
Yep, Baker likes to get sacked. So
yep, it's an easy one there. So let's move on to the Bears and the Saints. Tyson Bagent's looking like he's going to be playing again. However, I did see Justin Fields was throwing the football in the dome, practice dome today. So that's interesting. They said he is doubtful, but when they asked Eberflus about what doubtful meant, he was saying he was 51% sure he wasn't playing. So he was 1% towards doubtful. Yeah, he's not playing. But that's a good sign for next week and the week after. If he's out there throwing the ball, that he feels comfortable after that dislocation. I'm saying sit D'Onta Foreman. I don't know if Chris is agreeing with me here. I do have Roschon Johnson as a sleeper. I don't like the running game against the Saints defense. It's pretty solid, but Roschon has been the one that they've liked to use in the passing game. So I think D'Onta Foreman had 1 target, and Roschon I think had 4 last game. So I think that's the route they'll go in terms of this. I like DJ Moore just because it's hard to sit a guy that gets open like he does, and if Bagent can get him the ball here and there, it'll be decent enough. And I like Cole Kmet because he is the number 2 pass catcher there. There's nobody else. Not starting Mooney, not starting this defense.
No.
Now, this offense I do like in this game is the Saints. Derek Carr, 2 games in a row with over 300 yards passing. He's got Alvin Kamara as a cheat code check down. And Chris Olave has one of the top players out there for air yardage and target wise. They're just not on the same page. They're just not connecting. They've missed so many times, whether it's dropped by Olave or overthrown by Derek Carr. It's been inches. So I think this is a get right game for Olave. I think those owners that have been waiting for a blow up game have been waiting and waiting and waiting. This is the one that's been on the schedule that I'm saying if he's not right by after the Bears, you missed your opportunity to sell high on this guy. So.
And the guy who's really picked up the production when Olave hasn't gotten it is Rashid Shaheed.
Yep.
My boy, Rashid Shaheed. God, yeah. I've loved him. I've loved him all season.
I know you have. He was a preseason guy for you.
He's a preseason guy for me, and it's crazy to say. It's crazy to see like every week how like it's like 3-4 targets and he's getting 70 yards and a touchdown, and he is a legitimate receiver in this league. And I think having Olave and Michael Thomas on the field at the same time has really helped him out because they're scheming him open, and he's great at doing that. And with Derek Carr loving to throw the ball deep, it's just been a perfect marriage of those guys. Now, I know we have Michael Thomas as a sit here, and I think he's the odd man out. I think Olave's been targeted down the field. I think Taysom Hill at tight end has been actually playing the tight end position. And then Kamara getting 13 receptions out of the backfield every week is just, like you said, a cheat code. Cheat code check down. That's a good
cheat code check down. Well, here's the thing about Michael Thomas as a sit. He's only had 1 touchdown this season. It was 2 weeks ago. It's tough to sit a guy who's averaging over 7 targets a game. I know. But his output is so tough because he's never had over 10 yards per target. He has such low target range that you got to get those yards after the yards after catch. And the past 2 weeks, his yards per catch have been 14 and 17. They've been high. But before that, he's had ones that were 8, 7, 12, 13, 16, 9. It was all over the place. So now we're at a position where maybe it is viable for you to play all 3 of these receivers. I'm saying
if Carr keeps throwing for 300 yards, and for sure, at least 2 of these guys are going to pop off. But like I said, Kamara is getting volume at the receiving game. So one of these receivers, if you can't like all 3 of them and Kamara, Carr's not going out there and throwing for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards. So it's got to be divvied up somewhere, and that's where it's really hurting some of these receivers. And this is one of those teams where I wanted to avoid this passing offense because there's a lot of good players here, and they're just spreading the ball out too much to where it's not really. Rashid Shaheed's been the most consistent guy as a receiver all season, and we're saying that like that's tough sledding for if you're a guy that drafted Michael Thomas where you drafted him or Olave where you drafted him. That's rough when you have a guy like Rashid Shaheed who's going in the 13th round, and
or not even or undrafted,
and he's being and he's the guy that's most consistent on this offense. So you're right. Like Olave has to get right this game, and if Olave has to get right, where does that leave Michael Thomas?
No, I agree.
Like that's my thought process behind it.
Well, and here's the other part too: is Alvin Kamara has 44 targets in 5 games. He's almost average. Yeah, he's almost averaging 10 targets a game as a running back, which is huge. He only had 5 last week. That was his lowest, I believe. So, and Derek Carr still threw for 300 yards. So I think there's a world out there where you could feel comfortable starting Michael Thomas especially in PPR, I think, but in desperation play, you can. I just don't see, like, to me, touchdowns matter, and Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill, and Kamara are your touchdown guys, and you got to hope that Olave gets there too as well. Taysom Hill's a start for us because he is still running as a Wildcat and as a tight end. In fact, he's got a stat as a passer, a rusher, and a receiver this season already, and they're going to use him every time they get down to the red zone within the 10-yard line because it's hard to stop that play, period. Well, it's very hard.
What I like about Taysom Hill, and he was, I ended up getting Dalton Kincaid off waivers, a couple of weeks ago, and Taysom Hill was my number 2 that I was targeting because in the last 3 weeks he's been used more as a tight end. And yeah, he still is going to throw the ball, and yeah, he's still going to run the Wildcat and run the ball. But when he's starting to line up at tight end and be a receiver, that's the part of the game that you got to love.
And a good receiver, not just a receiver, a good receiver.
Right. It's no longer these these stud or dud games. He's being consistent enough at that tight end position where we all know that it's hard to find a guy that's being consistent. And if a guy's, Taysom Hill's getting 70 yards a game, or 50 yards a game, and having the opportunity at the goal line to also run it in, you gotta love being able to start him.
Yeah, I mean, Chris said it perfectly. He's no longer bottoming out. He has a floor, which is good. That's what you want from a streaming tight end, to the point where I think he's more than a streaming tight end because his ceiling. You plug him in, you forget about it, you don't overthink it, and you're going to be happy when he gets 22 points, and you got to be okay and swallow it if you've got only 4 points from him. That's what it is. And then you're going to start the Saints defense. They're just fantastic. They have been all season, and they're stingy. So let's move on to the Falcons-Vikings. This is a game that is going to be potentially ugly. No Drake London.
Tyler Heineke's a starter.
Heineke's going to be the starter, which I actually like more for this because they're going to throw the ball downfield a little bit more.
I like Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. You gotta hope Kyle Pitts. Maybe this is the guy who needs to be thrown to him. We like Bijan and Tyler Algier because they're going to be the backbone of the offense in this game. The Vikings have not been a bad defense as of late, so don't underestimate them there. But we like Kyle Pitts as a starter. I almost put Matt Collins as a sleeper here because he's a downfield threat, and Heineke is not afraid to gun it downfield too as well. So without Drake London there, somebody's going to have to get the receptions. Is it going to be Van Jefferson? Is it going to be Matt Collins? I don't know. That's why I didn't want to sit there and say, yeah, it's going to be Matt Collins as a sleeper, because it could be Van Jefferson at that point. Right. But trust the main studs here. But this Falcons defense has an opportunity to make up for a terrible game last week when they were supposed to do pretty good against a Viking rookie quarterback. And we'll move over to the Vikings here. Josh Dobbs, we have in here set as a starter if he starts. That's the caveat, if he starts. But it's most likely going to be the rookie. And if it's the
offense, I think he does come in and start.
Yeah. If it's the rookie, we're sitting the rookie, and you like the Falcons defense even more. If he starts, I like the Falcons defense a little bit less in a start here. You got to like Madison over Akers, although Akers is kind of creeping up here. They're going to probably run the ball more often than they have in the past. They're not going to be the number one team in terms of passing percentage anymore. Osborne is a sit. Jefferson and Hawkinson are going to be cautionary starts because at this point, if it's Dobbs, I like Addison and I like Hawkinson because Dobbs already shown that he loves to throw the tight end and loves to throw the number one wide receiver. Anybody outside of that, it's meh. But this Vikings defense, I will say, is a good start against a struggling Falcons offense with their backup playing, even though I think Heineke's better than their starter.
It's true.
But it could be an ugly game. It could be a low-scoring, ugly game affair here. So it may be. That's why I like both defenses, period.
Yeah.
Let's go to another one that we're unsure about the quarterback position with Matt Stafford and his thumb being game time decision. We have him as a sit either way. We're going to start Darrell Henderson here, and I would say even start Royce Freeman. Start the runners at this game here. You're going to start Cooper Kupp because you can't afford to sit him, number one. And Puka, same thing, although Puka has been out with a knee injury. He was last week, though, too, and still ended up playing. It's not that he looks like he's moving fine. Sit Tutu, sit Higbee. Start this defense against a very struggling Packers offense. Like, it might be the worst offense that I would want to try and start since early season Broncos at this point.
Yeah. I mean, they've really struggled. And this Rams defense is going to have to get right. They played really well early on in the season. They've struggled the last couple games against good teams, but they've struggled. And so I think that this is a week that defense gets right, and that could be good for the offense, especially the running backs. So I would agree with you. I think both those guys are viable starters this week. And again, we've kind of the theme of this week. There's four main starters at the running back position that are out this week. So if you have one of these guys, this has been the tough part, is that both of them have been viable. It's who's going to have the touchdowns, who's going to have the bigger games. But yeah, I would agree. Cooper Kupp, you got to start. I mean, he struggled the last 2 weeks, but you got to start him, even if Stafford's out. But Puka dealing with a knee injury, he's a guy that, again, he's been productive and he's been consistent. So it's a guy you got to have confidence in throwing in your lineup, unless you have just a stacked wide receiver core that you can afford to sit him.
Well, here's the argument too I'm making for these two receivers when people are saying, if Matt Stafford doesn't play, I don't like either one of those guys. Well, Matt Stafford hasn't been playing good football. Like, he's a good passer, yes. But anybody could go in and throw for 250 and 1 touchdown in a game. Like, what is Matt Stafford doing that's going to make you think that the backup can't at least get the ball in their direction multiple times a game? So that's why I'm not too worried about either one of those guys. Yeah, maybe they're not these 100-yard games from each one of them. Stuff may not be there, but he wasn't doing that before. One of them was getting it, and the other one wasn't really, or the other one was barely getting it. And he's only thrown for 1-2 touchdown game out there. Otherwise, only one of those two guys are scoring a touchdown. You still got to start them, but it shouldn't be that different in comparison to what you've been, what you've been doing this season already.
Right.
Let's talk about the Packers, because this is a rough season from the beginning to where they are now, and I don't like it for anybody. Aaron Jones was subpar last week, but so was his health and with his hamstring. So I'm going to say start him again, but cautionary. It could be a lot of the same that he had last week, or he could be a lot more healthier and be productive for you here. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs are both cautionary starts. Christian Watson obviously is the wide receiver 1 for this team, but Romeo Doubs is acting more like it, and he is the favorite target in the end zone. Not just red zone, the end zone for Jordan Love. So he has 5 touchdowns on the season, should be 6 because 1 bounced off his hands and went to Jaden Reed's hands. Those are the 2 guys, pass catcher-wise, that I'm going to trust from here on out until I see this offense change, period. Green Bay Packers D, I do like against this Rams without Matt Stafford, though, because they've actually been playing better while the offense went the other direction, they came the other direction, because I thought Green Bay was going to be a great defense to start the season, and they were just getting shellacked here and there, and now they're a lot more stingy.
Yep.
Washington at the Patriots. Commanders, Sam Howell is fantastic. And there's still whispers about him possibly getting benched or not playing. I don't know what's going on in Washington. It wasn't a full fire sale, but it was pretty darn close to it, giving up your 2 biggest defensive linemen.
For nothing.
For nothing. Yeah, well, then all of a sudden an article comes out talking about how they may trade for Bill Belichick in the offseason. Which, okay, well, is that what you got your picks for? I mean, like, the Sweat...
We'll get a 3rd-round pick. Send it over to them.
Sweat was a 2nd-round pick, which right now is actually pick number 34, which is pretty good pick for Sweat. I would say that. But it's tough to trade somebody like Chase Young. I know you don't want to pay him, but again, because he hasn't actually been performing how he should have been paid, but you also didn't get much for him either. Like you're talking about the number, was he number 1 overall his
number
year?
Two.
Yeah, number 2. And now he's a 3rd round pick for you. That sucks. That's tough, but it's Washington. What's surprising about that? Brian Robinson, I like, he has been a little bit
Clearing
down.
the books. Clearing the books.
He's been down the past couple of weeks here too, but the Patriots defense hasn't been, since they lost Judon and since they lost a couple of their linebackers. I don't like how this defense has been able to stop the run. So I think they go back to their bread and butter with Brian Robinson Jr. a little bit more. Still not playing Gibson. I'm not going to say start him at all until something happens to Brian Robinson. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, 2 pass catchers that I do want to start here, especially with Curtis Samuel being out. Dotson gets that bump up. And we saw it last week with the low snap percentage for Curtis Samuel. Jahan Dotson had a fantastic game. Not going to play Logan Thomas. And then after we lost 2 of the front 4, which were fierce, I'm not playing this Commanders defense. They're not going to get to the They're not getting to the quarterback. Mac Jones is going to be able to throw the ball. And even though they don't have the receivers, it's not going to be pretty because they can't stop anybody in the air.
Right.
So talk about this Patriots team here. You're starting Mac Jones, starting Stevenson.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, this is not more for these picks aren't positive for the Patriots. They're more, this defense is, you just lost your 2 best players on this defense. And they're on the defensive line. So I like Zeke as a sleeper. I like Stevenson as a bump in the target, especially because Stevenson was already commanding about, I think 25% of the receptions out of the backfield, or 25% target share. And now they lose Kendrick Bourne. So the targets are going to get split up. I don't think all of them go to Juju. I don't think all of them go to Demario Davis. I think that it's going to be increased Demario Douglas. I think that Stevenson's going to get some share of that. Same with Hunter Henry. So I like this offense more so because the defense I'm just not confident in at all. So Mac Jones, I think, does have a big day. He's going to have time back there. Even if he's without Kendrick Bourne in his main passing target, I think that Demario Douglas has really stepped up. And he's shown really a lot of flashes, and it's just been the Kendrick Bourne experience back there. And now with him gone for the season, the rookie has a chance to really step up. I do think that this is a good game for Hunter Henry to kind of bounce back as well. So I do like the Patriots offense in this game. I say that, and they're going to freaking disappoint me.
Well, I differ a little bit on Chris's picks here. I have Juju as a start in this game. I gave him the nod towards the sit when we were discussing this because he made a valid arguments about it, but that being
I'm compelling at times.
Yeah, well, he's just stern, and he doesn't let you get a word in. But I like Juju. And that's only because we just talked about him earlier with the Chiefs. He was almost 1,000-yard receiver last week. You have a head injury to Devontae Parker. You have Kendrick Bourne gone. He signed a 3-year, $33 million contract with them. I mean, how are you not going to try and get him the ball? So I just like it because if he's healthy, he's out there. He's only been out because of concussion. It wasn't an ailment to a knee or anything like that. I do like Douglas, though. I'm not saying I don't. And I actually like Mike Gesicki a little bit because I think they're going to be able to run some little bit more 12-man here, double tight end sets, because they just don't have the bodies in the wide receiver opportunities. So you're going to have Douglas, you're going to have Schuster, and you could have both the tight ends going out, and both are good pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't like Gesicki as much. I like Hunter Henry and I like Pharaoh Brown because Pharaoh Brown has
I will give you Pharaoh Brown. Yeah.
Over Gesicki as a secondary option at tight end as a pass catcher because, coming into the season, we really did think that Gesicki and Hunter Henry were going to be kind of this 2 tight end set. But, the big play has come from Pharaoh Brown at the tight end position. And so I like him there as a sleeper. I mean, it's a deep shot sleeper at tight end. But I'll say you'll hear it here first. Pharaoh Brown, sleeper pick at tight end.
I mean, yeah, Gesicki has been going on and off for 72 snap percent down to 30 up to 75, down to 20. And so it's back and forth. Past 2 games, he's only had 5 targets and 4 catches for a touchdown and a total of 16 yards.
Game-winning
a total of 16 yards. So I get that. The one thing I do think is Washington is terrible against the tight end, and they're terrible against the deep ball. And to me, Pharaoh Brown, Demario Douglas has been a low. I know we're spending a lot of time on the Patriots here, guys. I'm sorry, but Demario Douglas has had a low yards per target. That's the thing that scares me here versus Juju and maybe Pharaoh Brown or Hunter Henry down the seam or anything like that. Yeah. So that's my only concern with Demario Douglas.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, let's go over to
move on from this team.
Yeah, let's move on from the Patriots. Carolina Panthers versus the Colts. I actually kind of like Carolina this week. They've played pretty good football the previous couple weeks. Adam Thielen has had a resurgence in his career compared to, well, it's tough to play second fiddle to Justin Jefferson for the past couple of years and Stephon Diggs. But even with Diggs, he was still a touchdown machine. And even with Jefferson, he was still a touchdown machine. I like Bryce Young as a sleeper here against the Colts, who have been in these big, high-scoring affairs because their defense can't stop scoring points, yet their offense keeps scoring too. So I like Bryce Young to have a big game here this week. I'm not talking about 4 touchdowns. We're not talking Will Levis, first game of his career. I'm talking probably 2 touchdowns here for Bryce Young, which is pretty good for him, and about 275. Chuba Hubbard is pretty much the RB1 in this team. And it sucks for Sanders owners out there. It's why I said avoid him. I didn't like him at all. But Chuba, you're going to throw out there, and you're going to start him, and you're going to start Thielen. The one wide receiver outside of Thielen that I think has been getting an increased number of routes run and snap percentage is Jonathan Mingo. So I have him as a sleeper. The other guys are just not really stepping up as much as they should be. And if you look at the game log, Mingo had started off the season 87 snap percentage, 98 snap percentage with 8 targets week 2, and then he got injured, only played a third of the game, didn't come back till week 5, worked his way back up last week against Houston, 5 targets, 99% of the snaps, 4 catches for 62 yards. I think this is going to be the pattern you're going to see for the rest of the season.
I do too. I think he's getting more involved. There's a reason they drafted him, right? And there's a reason they have some other veteran receivers. They got Thielen, they got some other playmakers there. With DJ Chark down the field, but I think that they drafted Mingo to be a complement to Thielen as a possession volume receiver, and we're going to start seeing his production increase and see his volume increase. So I do like Mingo. I think he's a good sleeper option this week. And I agree with you. Thielen's just been absolutely fantastic. He's been a league winner, steal, late round draft pick for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about their opponent, the Indianapolis Colts. I have Gardner Minshew as a sit. I know a lot of people love Gardner Minshew as the guy to pick up if you were a Kirk Cousins owner, and I don't disagree with that. I just think this week against Carolina, who's actually been pretty good against the pass, fantasy-wise against quarterbacks, because they're so bad against the run. And to me, this is a Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss game. I think these two guys just run that Carolina defense into the ground. I still like Michael Pittman here. With Josh Downs dealing with a knee injury, and I don't know if he was ruled out, but he was definitely questionable, and it was going to be game time decision. He was the only other pass catcher that I'd like to start here. I will say the Indianapolis Colts defense is a streamable defense here because they are a takeaway team here, and they get to the quarterback, and you're still facing a rookie, and Bryce Young has not been perfect. So I do like them if you're a streaming option. They're not my top 10, I'd say, but they're in my top 12.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on Minshew? Like, do you have any other advice besides Gardner Minshew of a quarterback that you like that was probably out on waivers? I know you were out this past week, and I put it out there for a couple quarterbacks. If, besides Kyler Murray, anybody else, Sam Howell as a replacement for Cousins rest of the season?
Yeah, I think Sam Howell, even Heineke, not this week, but even Heineke long term. I think Dobbs actually can step into that. The team is ready to pass, and he didn't play poorly in Arizona, where you can. There's a huge difference in talent between the Arizona Cardinals wide
Oh,
receiver core
absolutely.
and the Vikings. And you saw what he was doing with the Arizona Cardinals offense. And now he's going to an offense where, yeah, he doesn't have the best offensive line. He didn't in Arizona either. But now his weapons are way better. And so Dobbs is a sneaky option to where, like, I would hold on to him. He's going to probably be the starter the rest of the season. They just traded for him, and they really don't have anyone else there. And they're in contention. Like, they're not out this season. Justin Jefferson comes back probably next week or the week after. And you're going to have some legitimate weapons on the outside for him.
Well, I will say they would be out of contention, in my opinion, if they can't beat Atlanta and they can't win next week. Like these next 2 weeks are critical, and it's also critical for Justin Jefferson whether or not he needs to try and rush back at all for any reason, too. I think that's the difficult part, But I agree with you. They're not out of contention. They're right back in it, and they have an opportunity, which Justin Jefferson, they're going to want him back, and he's going to want to come back and play. So, and Dobbs is a guy that I think gives them the best opportunity. I agree with you on that one. So,
I mean, dare I say Zach Wilson even? Dare I say it?
Dare you say it? Well, speaking of New York team, let's talk about Giants Raiders.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. Who's worse?
What a dumpster fire.
No, the fire hasn't even started. It's already been put out by the fans taking a piss on it.
Yeah, there's still some kindling left there. Ready to ignite at any point.
It sounds like Daniel Jones is going to play. I don't like starting him. I don't know how they're going to use him because his neck is still not right, let's be honest. But he's clear for contact. Saquon's the guy you want to start here. They're going to give him the ball 25 to 30 times again this game against a bad rush defense. In terms of pass catchers, though, we have 3 sleepers out there. It's not because we couldn't decide on which one to be a sleeper. Wandale and Jalen Hyatt, we've already said it this season already, they are trying to get the ball to their youth, their young guys, their future. And that's Wandale, who they drafted last year, and that's Jalen Hyatt, who they drafted this year. And snap percentages have gone through the roof for both these guys, especially Jalen Hyatt, who's seen his highest snap percentage the past 2 weeks. Daniel Bellinger, I have as sleeper too, because if you go back to the season last year with Daniel Jones, he was a great receiving tight end for Daniel Jones. He's going to be in there a lot because he's a good blocker too. Towards the end of the season, he was getting 40, 50 yards a game easily. His touchdowns came early in the season, so he was very touchdown dependent tight end. But again, I like him. I'm not saying start him. I'm not saying go pick him up, but don't be surprised if he goes out there and does find the end zone at one point. And then this Giants defense, I think, is one that you're going to want to start against that Raiders offense that's going to be going with Aiden O'Connell this week.
Yeah, I don't know what to make. Like, we saw Aiden O'Connell take some snaps this year in games, and he hasn't looked that great. But then we've also seen him in the preseason just torch teams up.
Yeah.
And now he's playing with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and Michael Mayer. And they got some weapons here too. I do agree. I think that the Giants' front seven is really good, or at least their defensive front is good, and they can get after the quarterback. They traded Leonard Williams, but I don't think that's much of a good. They had plenty of depth there on the defensive line.
They needed to do that a year ago.
Yeah, and so I like the Giants' defense here as more of a sleeper than anything else. But I think that this could be a Devontae Adams get right game too. So
yeah, by all means, this could be a complete flip flop of what we saw on Monday night, where this team just comes out and just makes the Giants look silly. But the Giants defense has not been playing bad. They've had 3 straight fantastic games against Buffalo, against Washington. Yeah. So I think there's an opportunity for them to shut this team down. So I just don't trust anybody in this game besides Jacobs, Saquon, and Devontae Adams. And even Devontae Adams, I'm like holding on by a thread whether or not I'd play him.
Right.
So we do have Jacobs and Devontae Adams as starts. We're sitting everybody else. Mayer is a sleeper. Again, that's not when we say sleepers here, we don't mean start them. We're just saying like, hey, if you have Mayer and you're choosing between him and somebody else, and we have that guy as a sit and Mayer as a sleeper, then okay, yeah, maybe throw him in as your sleeper opportunity because I think he's got a good chance to do some stuff. He was he just was missed last week and held Jimmy Garoppolo didn't throw to him until the fourth quarter. And this Raiders
great out there.
Yeah, he does. When he's out there, he looks fantastic. And the Raiders defense is a sleeper here too as well because we just know that the Giants offense, I believe they're still the lowest scoring offense. Yeah, it's still the lowest scoring offense in the NFL right now, which is why we're not loving to start anybody on the Giants except Saquon.
Yeah.
Eagles Cowboys. Let's go to a more exciting game.
Yeah.
So Philadelphia.
Big jump
Yeah, Philadelphia. You're starting Jalen Hurts. You're starting DeAndre Swift. I know it's a tough Cowboys defense, but DeAndre Swift has still done well against the tough defenses, whether it be 100 yards or whether it be a touchdown. He's been able to still do that against the tougher run defenses he's faced this season. A.J. Brown is on a historic tear. They're not going to try and derail that. They're going to try and continue that going. Devonta Smith had a good game last week. He was a cautionary start for me last week, saying, hey, you got to start him because it's hard to sit anybody on this offense, but caution. And this is going to be the same thing this week. It's like he's only done it one time this whole season. We're 9 weeks in. I just want to, until I start seeing a pattern there, that it's going to be tough for me to trust that. But Dallas Goedert, he's been a little bit more on every single week since he was a squeaky wheel and they came out and they started talking about him. Yep. He's been targeted heavily. So you're starting all those pass catchers. I had the Eagles defense as a sit. Chris questioned that, but to me, they had 7 points against, in our league, 7 points. I don't know what it is in some of the other leagues, but they were terrible defense to start against Sam Howell last week. And they were terrible against Sam Howell the first time they played him. And so now you got, to me, Dak Prescott is playing at least the same level as Sam Howell is right now. Dak Prescott's playing good football, and so is CeeDee Lamb. I think it's just going to be and Brandon Cooks. It's going to be a tough one for them to defend. They just still can't defend the pass that well.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that I question with you just because it's a divisional matchup between the two leaders in the division, and two really good football teams. And so I think that, like, I would agree with you. If I'm going to favor the offense or the defense, I'm going to favor the offense. And so you got to the Eagles have been great against the run. They've been absolutely fantastic against the run, but they've been shelled in the passing game.
Yeah.
And so if the Dallas Cowboys can't get the run going, it's going to be all on Dak. And unfortunately, he's let us down when the game's been on him.
It's very true. It's very true.
Been a good quarterback, and that's my issue. That's where I question sitting the Eagles defense. Where if I don't have another defense, I'm not going to drop the Eagles or drop another position player. Like, I'll start the Eagles defense in this game because Dak, when the game's on his shoulders, he crumbles.
Yeah. Well, let's just put it this way: in a divisional match against Washington, the Eagles had 5 sacks the first game against them and 1 sack against them this past week, which was weird. They did not have they had 1 interception last week, none in the first game, but both games they've had at least 365 total yards given up. 365 for the first game, 472 yards this past week through the air.
I know.
Unless Sam Howell is going to be our next, like, Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, one of those guys we're going to be drafting in our top 10 next year and put him in that status. Like, if he's just like Justin Herbert, I mean, I don't know. Like, that's to me, Dak Prescott is going to be able to do something the way he's been throwing the ball as of recent. That's why I like him, and I don't like this Eagles defense as much. It doesn't mean that they're not going to get a turnover. It doesn't mean they're going to play bad.
They're borderline with me. So, like, I can go with your argument, but, like, they're borderline with me where it's just I can make the argument for start them because I just don't trust Dak.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
It's really easy for you to look at the Dallas Cowboys and say, look at who they beat. They really haven't played competition. And
yeah, I mean, Giants, Jets, Arizona, New England. I mean, besides San Francisco, which they did not beat.
Got freaking shackled.
Then it was the LA Rams and LA Chargers. Right. And the LA Chargers game was close.
Yeah, and so they're playing a legit team who every time a team has challenged them, they've come out on top.
Yeah.
So I will say I do like all the pass catchers for the Eagles. Like, I don't have a caution with Devonta Smith. Go and play him. Go and play AJ Brown.
Here's the thing too. Dallas Cowboys defense has only had 2 games of total yardage over 270 or 280, I should say, and it was against Arizona and San Francisco. Arizona, they gave up 28 points, 42 against San Francisco. Everything else, they've shut people down completely. I mean, you take away the Giants week 1 game, that was an anomaly with that rain and everything like that. But I don't think it's going to be easy sailing for the Eagles, but I don't think the Eagles offense is just too tough to sit, or Eagles offense is too tough to say that the Cowboys are going to shut them down. I mean, let's look at the Cowboys here. We do have the Dallas Cowboys defense as a start. I have them as a start purely because they are actual touchdown takeaway machines when it comes to their defense. You know, they're one of the few. They did it last year. They've done it the year before. They score touchdowns when they get the ball in their hands, versus most of the other teams are going to just be like, oh, okay, you know, we got the ball here. They've got 4 touchdowns on the season, you know, including one this past week already against the Rams. So I like them for that purpose. I don't love them against the Eagles, but you're starting Dak. You're starting Tony Pollard with caution. He has not been playing good football. If you drafted him in the first round, I'm sorry. If you drafted him in the second round, I'm sorry, because he's not playing to that level right now. You should have went with ETN. Rico Dowdle, yeah, we both said it too. Rico Dowdle is a sit because until they start splitting time, which I don't know if that'll ever happen, but until they do that, he's not worthy of a start, barring injury.
The Eagles defense, I wouldn't play him anyway.
Yeah. CeeDee Lamb start. He's been fantastic. Brandon Cooks, he's coming on now and getting the trust and the work in with Dak Prescott, and same with Ferguson as well. So these pass catchers here, and like we talked about the Dallas defense, they have an opportunity to get a couple takeaways here, and if they can get in the end zone with one, that'll eat and take away any points they give up on the board by giving you 6 on your defense.
I completely zoned out when you started the Dallas Cowboys offense because I was thinking about the Eagles running the tush push like 5 plays in a row, all different plays out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. They're going to start throwing the passes in there. It's going to be a sweep pass to the tight end.
Let's move on to the Bengals-Bills. This is another big primetime game that's huge, and it's on primetime Sunday night. Joe Burrow is firing on all. What'd you say?
I said I hope DeMar Hamlin's not playing.
Oh, that's right.
The last time these two played on primetime,
it happened.
That happened.
That's right. Joe Burrow, start. He's playing very good football as a recent. He looks like the passer we wanted him to be as a fantasy owner, but he just looks like he's comfortable back there. Yeah. That helps Joe Mixon out, obviously, but Joe Mixon's been playing pretty good all along. They just had to abandon the run so many times because they couldn't keep up with points for the rest of the game. Yeah. And Jamar Chase, I like. T. Higgins, I had him as a sit last week. I like him as a start this week. He looked pretty good.
Have you seen the stat that's floating around that like 40% of teams that are winless in fantasy football have T. Higgins on their roster?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Sit him.
I'm not going to say sit him. I think he's get right. I think it's a complete correlation with how Joe Burrow was playing football at the beginning of the season, plus his injury. And I think last week he was still lingering effects of the injury. I think he's going to be fine this week. I like him. He did have a blow up week earlier this season, one of the best wide receiver weeks out there, top 10. But sit Tyler Boyd, sit Irv Smith, play Bengals defense because this Bills offense has not been looking that great to me. And I think the Bengals defense has actually been pretty good overall. They're not giving up big games here and there, which is what the Bills need to do to beat some of these teams. I mean, listen, the Giants showed up big against Buffalo. Except for that one drive, the Giants had a chance to beat them. So in terms of Buffalo, you're starting Allen, you're starting Cook, who to me is still the RB1 there. I don't care about Latavius Murray or Leonard Fournette. In fact, I think Leonard Fournette probably just supplants Latavius Murray, in my opinion, just because if he has any sort of gear left in him, it's going to be better than Murray because Murray hasn't really done anything, and Damian Harris is on IR with no timetable for return. Stephon Diggs is a start. Gabe Davis is a sit to me just because it's a tough defensive matchup. I don't know if I like playing the cold or hot game with Gabe Davis. I'd say Shakir would be a sleeper for me in this game. And then you're starting Dalton Kincaid. You saw it last week. You got to like what you especially you, Chris, you got to like what you see out of that one.
I like the way I look.
Yeah, and then the Buffalo Bills defense, I still like playing them here. I don't. It doesn't mean this is going to be a high-scoring game. They're weak against the run, which is why I really like Joe Mixon on the other side. But you've got to respect the pass with Joe Burrow, with Chase and Higgins, and the rest of those guys there. So, but they're still a good defense. They're not bad.
Yeah.
And let's round out. And for all those sitting with us, thank you for staying for the long haul. If you skipped around and you're at this point to hear about the Chargers and Jets, good for you for using our chapters.
Jets.
Well, not so
baby.
fast. Not so fast. We're
Let's go,
talking about
baby.
the Chargers first. LA Chargers, you're starting Herbert. You're starting Eckler. Kelly is a sleeper because he just likes to play better football when Austin Eckler's in the game. Don't know what it is. If teams out there say like, oh, Kelly's in there, we're not going to worry about the run now. We're going to check off to our coverage. And then he just gets the ball. And he has an open hole. I don't get what it is, but it is what it is. You got to love what Austin Eckler did through the air last week. You got to hope that, and I think the Jets have been prone to big run plays in the past couple games and really the season. And I think this is going to be a better one for Austin Eckler in terms of yards per carry. But you got to like what you saw out of the backfield from him. Keenan Allen didn't have that much himself last week. I think he's going to be back in it. I have him as a start because it's hard to sit this guy. He is going to see both those cornerbacks, but he's still one of the best wide receivers to cover out there. So he's going to get his. Quentin Johnston, I almost put him as a sleeper here, but to me, this is just a tough passing defense that I think it's going to be an opportunity for them to work on the ground here and there. Same thing with the tight ends. I thought about Donald Parham because he is just so touchdown happy. Every time they get in the red zone, the guy's open. I mean, he's 6'7". How is he not going to be open? So that is an option out there if you want to try and take a flyer on a streamer. It's a good DFS play, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, and then the Chargers defense, they give up points, but they've also been pretty good at takeaways and pretty good. And you're playing against Zach Wilson. I think they're going to give a lot up. I think they're going to give a lot up to Breece Hall, and I'm transitioning here to the Jets, which is why I like Breece Hall here. I'll let you talk about your Jets here because we only have starts for Wilson, Hall, and the Jets defense with Lazard as a sleeper. But you tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, let's pump the brakes a little bit. All right, so this, like, again, Zach Wilson's not anything to write home about. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Kirk Cousins or Mahomes, but he's been playing really well. Last week, I know that they weren't able to score a lot, but they were down 5 offensive linemen in that game. They lost their center in that game. They lost their backup center in that game, and their rookie center or their rookie guard, who was a center in college, didn't play in that game. They were also down 2 other offensive linemen, and they still won the game. And Zach Wilson didn't turn the ball over, and that's what he's had 1 interception over the last 5 games, and that's what you. No,
he's definitely not playing football like Zach Wilson of last year. I give him that for sure.
He had a couple big drops in the Giant game. He ended up throwing for over 250.
That overtime drive looked good, and the game tying drive looked good.
Yeah, and so you gotta like Garrett Wilson for sure. And this is what I said in the beginning of the season when Aaron Rodgers got hurt, is that Garrett Wilson should be a hold. And you should hold on him because he is still going to get volume and he's still going to be the number 1 receiver on that team. And he's too good and too talented to just drop. Lazard, I really like in this game. I like him as a sleeper because I don't fear this Chargers defense. This Chargers defense, as many good weapons as they have, I don't think that they've been able to stop a lot of teams. And you look at worse teams that have been able to be successful against the Chargers. And whether that is the play calling, I mean, the Jets.
I think it's parts of the play calling, but
the story of the Jets has been the Jets defense, and they're going to be a start for us this week. They've been able to get after the quarterback. They've been able to create turnovers, and those turnovers have been key for the Jets offense to be able to move the ball downfield. I do think that there is going to be one of these games where they're going to absolutely pop off. This could be it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it all depends on the Chargers defense play calling wise, because if they pass rush like we know they can with Khalil Mack and Bosa, like they're a tough defense. They make mistakes, and you've got a ball hawk and an absolute stud in Derwin James. He plays a position that is really not played that much anymore by any teams. He plays the Palomalu. He plays the, that free safety that floats around and plays more like a linebacker here and there. You don't have a ton of those guys in the league, which also can be a disruptor, but also can, handicap you a little bit in terms of how your defense plays, because he can cause some mismatches and coverages when you needed that second guy over top safety. But yeah, I think this is going to be a fun matchup to watch. Another good Monday night game here too as well. So
yeah.
That being said, that's the end of it for us here.
Fun. They're always fun between the Chargers and the Jets.
Yeah, it always is. It always is. But thanks for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification button. Keep in tune. We'll have shorts here and there. Any last-minute stuff will pop up if you have any big injury reports change here and there. But as always, if you have any questions, feel free. Put a comment down below. Start, sit, trade, anything like that. Send it our way, and we'll give you your advice. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.